This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Sai. Welcome, everyone. So, in honor of Thanksgiving, we have a very special subject this morning. We're going to talk about a famous stira in the Rambam, probably the most famous stira of all the stiras in the Rambam. This is the most famous one, where this year is taking place here in Kilas Avos Yisrael. We're primed to enter our new building. We just need a little bit of money. If anyone out there could help us out, or anyone even here in the building right now wants to help us put up this binyan from which all the Torah will emanate, wherever it is emanating to, whether it's the United States of America or all over the world. If you could be mechazik us so that we could reach more people, we'd appreciate it. Either you could help us with a nadava or a loan, and you will be blessed min hashamayim. Just please let us know, because the building is going up very quickly. Okay, says the Rambam. And how was that? That was good? Okay. Yeah, okay. You could come in on okay. Says the Rambam in Hilchos Tefilla, Parak Dalet Halacha Aleph. Chamisha dvar ma'ak v'nes tefillah. There are 4 things that interfere with tefillah. Meaning, if you don't do them, you're not yotzei. They're ma'akev being yotzei tefillah. Afal pi shehigia zmano, even though the time has come. Meaning, avad, if you daven shachar in the middle of the night, that's also ma'akev. But we're talking about it's the right time. Even though it's the right time, there are 5 things that could prevent your tefillah from being accepted. Number 1, taharas yadayim, purity of hands. Meaning, if your hands are dirty, a person went to the facility and his hands are soiled, you're not yotzei tefillah, so your hands have to be clean. Number 2, v'kisei ha'erva. The erva has to be covered. That means 2 things. That means, first of all, the erva of a man has to be covered. You have to wear at least a covering of the erva. But even if the erva is covered, but if it's one contiguous cover, meaning it's one robe without a separation between the heart and the erva, also you won't be a yotzei. Number 3, v'taras makam tefillah. The place has to be clean, which means that if you're within arba amos of a davar tameh, for example, tsaya, you would not be yotzei tefillah, or for the same, or an erva. Now, this is very important halacha. What does that mean in erva? That means that if a girl has either above her elbows uncovered or above her knees uncovered, you're not yotzei the tefillah, you're not yotzei the davening. You have to stop. Then now, from what age? From the age, it's machlokes. Mishnah Berurah holds from the age of 3. Or makel, usually, if you need to, Chazon says, when they're a little bit older. What age? The oldest is 9. 9 years old, if the elbow is uncovered, you're not yotzei tefillah. So what do? You got to stop. You got to stop davening. That's it. There's nothing to do. You can't wait. That's the Rambam. The Rambam says the makam hatefillah has to be clean, either from davar atzaya or from erva. Or that means like this. Let's say you're on the train and you want to learn. So it's a big problem. The lady in front of you, her elbows are uncovered. You can't learn. You can learn in your mind, but you can't say the words. If you say the words, you're not yotzei. Also, now Chavetz Chaim says this very strongly. Chavetz Chaim says, person thinks that they're going to go up to Shemayim, and at least their Torah and Tefillah will be a zechus for them. Chavetz Chaim says, but if your wife had her hair uncovered and you made kiddush, you're not yotzei the kiddush. Now Chavetz Chaim is very machmer on that. There's a kula, the Aruch HaShulchan, for hair. But for elbows and knees, there's no kula. You say kiddush. You blew the kiddush. You don't get credit for kiddush. So it's a very important thing to bear in mind. This is the third quality of to be yotzei tefillah. No.
On a hashkafic level.
Yeah.
It used to be that even by the non-Jews, people dressed seriously, and that people were covered, and it was
right.
Very uncommon to have somebody who would be in the streets with elbows uncovered, with other
right.
covered. And nowadays,
it's rampant. It's blatant.
Does that change any of this?
Very little. It changes one dimension. Elbows, knees, and collarbone, it doesn't change. Most women today are not cognizant of it. Doesn't matter. Meaning, they're considered prutzos. And the fact that they don't uphold the standards of the Torah, and maybe everyone doesn't, 99% is completely irrelevant. There's a certain objective standard that doesn't change by the fact that women, or many women, do not uphold it. However, where it does make a difference is hair. The Moshe says hair maybe is not objectively an erva, it's not inherently an erva, it's only an erva because it could lead a person to be maharar. But if it's so blatant and rampant and nobody's covering it, so that's where the kula comes by hair. But elbows and knees, there's no leniency. So b'diavad, if you have a woman, according to Rav Moshe and according to Aruch HaShulchan, if there's a woman whose hair is uncovered, b'diavad, you could be, I'd say, kiddush.
You could learn without.
Now you could always, if you're on the train, you can learn without saying the words. Now this is the difference between tsaya and erva. That if there's something soiled, a bathroom, a dirty diaper, you can't even think in learning. But if there's an erva, you're now to say words of learning, so you couldn't be maver sedra. But you can learn the daf, in your mind, yeah. Yeah. Just be careful, yeah. Okay, weiter. That's not what the shiur is about, but it's always good to get it in, I'm telling you. Okay. Or if you're preoccupied, you're worried. What are you worried about? You're worried when the shiur is going to be over. You're worried when the building's going to go up. If you have something worrying you, then you're not yotzei tefillah. Now that's something that Bizman Hazeh, the Mishnah Berurah says, b'chlal, people are so distracted in general. Everyone's always distracted. There's always something distracting a person. Mm-hmm. And number 5, kavanas halev. The 5th thing that's ma'akev tefillah is kavana. Now, what part do you have to be mechavein for, right? That means the Rambam's saying that if you don't have kavana, you're not yotzei tefillah.
What's the difference between 4 and 5?
4 is you're distracted. 5 is you have to have positive kavana. Well, maybe we'll get to that, what the difference is. A good point. Again, the Rambam says the 5th thing that's ma'akev tefillah is kavana. Now, kavana for what? The Rambam doesn't say, so presumably that means you have to be mechavein for the entire tefillah. That means, let's say if in the middle of the Lam al Shinim, a person's thinking, who are the Cowboys and the Lions playing today? At the Cheshbonah, yeah, they still play on... I don't need to know right now. It's just a theoretical question. What?
I understand something.
Yeah.
All the things here, except for pretty much the erva, are things that you can control, right?
Yeah.
You could wash your hands. You could try to clear your head of thoughts.
Right.
Whatever, something else that you really don't control. Why does that affect your davening?
Look, because you're right. Some things you're not in control of, and you're not yotzei. We're not gonna punish you, but you're just not yotzei.
You remove yourself from the environment also. Go somewhere else.
No, he's saying, what about if something's disturbing you? What do?
No,
you don't daven. That's the in the back in the day, you wouldn't daven. The halacha was in the Medina de Shulchan Aruch, if you go on a trip and you come, you don't daven for a certain number of days. You're not settled. Your mind is not settled. Nowadays, no one is ever settled. Nowadays, everybody is scatterbrained. Okay, good. That's the Rambam. The Rambam says that kavana is ma'akev. Now, kavana for what? Does that mean you have to have kavana for the whole Shemona Esrei? Sure, seems that way. He doesn't say not. However, the Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, Parak Yud, Halacha Aleph, the Rambam says like this: Mi shehispalel, someone who davens, v'loi kivein es libay, and didn't have kavana. Meaning you didn't think about the meaning of the words. Yachsar v'yispalel bekavana. You have to daven again. You hear this halacha? Let's say you daven, and your mind the whole time was like, you know how it is. You start off with one thing. Through Shemona Esrei, your mind could think of like 1,000 different things, just in one bracha alone. You go from one thing, you think about, what am I going to eat for breakfast? I'm going to Setchayam, I got to go to a shoe store, I have to buy a suit. A suit? What do I have to have? A wedding next Tuesday night. How am I getting there? Oh, it's in Williams. Did you hear it, right? The way the mind works, it's like, rapid fire speed, and you go from one topic to the next. The Rambam says if you are not mechavein during Shemona Esrei, you have to daven again. However, says the Rambam, v'im kivein es libay bebracha rishayna, shuv eino yitzarech. If you're mechavein for avos, you don't have to go back. By the way, that's mashma. If you are not mechavein for avos, you do have to go back. And that's the halacha. If, let's say you said the first bracha Shemona Esrei, and you didn't have kavana, the meaning of the words, you have to daven again. However, comes the Torah, and the Torah says, Bizman hazeh, you don't daven again. Why? Because we're so distracted, Bizman hazeh, that when you daven again, you're not going to have a kavana again. So basically, you're lost. So, there's no way to correct it, and, you just hope for the best. But we're here this morning to point out that these two Rambams seem to contradict each other. Why? Because the first Rambam says, there are 5 things that are ma'akev tefillah, and the 5th thing is kavana. And the Rambam doesn't say for how much of Shemona Esrei you need to be mechavein. Presumably then it means the entire thing. And here the Rambam in Parak Yud is saying that if b'diavad you only had kavanah for avos, then you're good to go. That's a steer to the first Rambam. The first Rambam seems to say you have to be mechavein for the whole Shemona Esrei. So Yossi wants to say, relax, hold your horses here. Avada, the Rambam in Parak Dalet is just defining generally that one needs to be mechavein. How much do you need to be mechavein to? For that, you look in Parak Yud, and there the Rambam defines that it's limited to the first bracha, meaning we can make a whole shiur out of this now. It's not a stira. The Rambam in Parak Dalet says you have to have kavana, and the Rambam in Parak Yud limits it to the first bracha. He qualifies what does it mean to be mechavein. That's what the Chazon says, basically. So the Chazon says, number 3, Yesh Loimer, the Rambam in Parak Dalet, he's talking about tefillah in general. But how much does a person have to be mechavein? What is ma'akev? For that you look in Parak Yud, and there he limits it to the first bracha. But it's Yedua and Meforsam that Reb Chaim Brisker rejected this pshat. Why? What could be wrong with it? It sounds like a beautiful pshat. Chazon says it. Rabbi Yossi Badner says it. What's wrong with this pshat? You know, what's the shverkeit with this pshat? Right? What's the shverkeit over here? So the Rav Moshe Soloveitchik points out that it's doichek for the following reason, because you have to look at it in context. The Rambam Parak Daled lists 5 things: clean hands, cover the erva, clean place, don't be distracted. The first 4 things are ma'akev the entire Shemana Esrei. So if the Rambam groups together kavana, presumably kavana is also ma'akev in the entire Shemana Esrei. I mean, if you have 5 things and 4 of them, you have to ensure that it's in place for the entire Shemana Esrei, then it sure doesn't seem like the Rambam would only require kavana for the beginning.
4 are like lava, 4 don't do, and 1 is you have to do.
So you say it could be that the first 4 are negative things, so that it's ma'akev but to the infusion of a positive kavana, then it's only ma'akev first. Yeah, I hear. That's what the Chazon would say, right? That so look at, and Rabbi Yosef, let's look at number 4. So Moshe Soloveitchik says, it would be very difficult to say that the Rambam in Parak Daled only refers to the first bracha, and therefore Hashem Mishum Zamiyin Hagrach L'Taritzkin. That's why the Reb Chaim Brisker rejects this pshat, because the Rambam is Chashav Heidvarim, V'dal Me'advarim Dinam B'chalat Tefillah. 4 of the 5 apply by a whole tefillah, like he says in the beginning of the parak until Halacha Tesvav. All of these things are ma'akev the entire tefillah. And would it then make sense that kavana is only ma'akev in the first bracha? No, if he's grouping it together, probably it has the same guidelines. Va'oid! All these other things, the Rambam in Parak Daled says when they're ma'akev, when they're not. In Parak Daled, the Rambam talks about taras yadayim, he talks about kisoy erva, he talks about taras hamakam, and he doesn't say a word about kavana. Why all of a sudden in Parak Yud then would he jump and say, oh, by the way, that which I said 6 prakim earlier, I just want to limit that to the first parak? No, he should have explained it b'makaymai in Parak Daled. The fact that he doesn't implies that it's self-evident, that if I say you need kavana is for the entire thing, otherwise I would have let you know otherwise. And therefore, it's shver, like why is the Rambam in general only talking about the guidelines of kavana in Parak Yud? Why doesn't he explain it in Parak Dalet? So that's a big question. And this is based on this stira on the Rambam, and based on the fact that Reb Chaim did not go for this explanation of the Chazon Ish, Reb Chaim Brisker basically outlines and gives over to Klal Yisrael a very sort of a very great responsibility when it comes to tefillah. And that is, Reb Chaim Kedarka B'Kodesh says, in order to answer see in the Rambam, Shnei Dinim, there are 2 types of kavana. One type of kavana you need to have for the whole Shemana Esrei, and one type of kavana you need to have only for the first bracha. So until now we're dealing with one kavana, and that is Perish HaMilos, right? The meaning of the words. Baruch Atah Hashem, you are the source of blessing Hashem, our God, the God of our forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Yitzchak, God of Yaakov, Hakel, the mighty God, Hagadol, yeah, right? Perish HaMilos, you have to think about the meaning of the words. And there's a stira. Does the Rambam say you need to do it the whole Shemana Esrei, or is it enough to do it the first bracha? But says the Reb Chaim, there are 2 dinim in tefillah. There are 2 dinim in kavana. One is Perish HaMilos, and one is the following. I'll give you a mashal. Sometimes kavana is more than just kavana. Sometimes kavana will completely alter what you're doing. You go to the airport, you land in JFK, and you're waiting for your baggage. So, a suspicious-looking guy, as your baggage is coming down the conveyor belt, he's wearing a ski mask. His, 2 eyes are sticking out. He looks to his left. He looks to his right. And your baggage has that rainbow ribbon on it, so you can spot it from a mile away. Yeah. He takes your baggage, and he starts walking. The only thing is, he's a ganav. Then you have another guy. He's wearing a red cap. He's wearing the official garment of somebody working in the airport. He lifts your baggage off the conveyor belt, and he starts to walk away. The only thing is, he's doing it for you. What's the difference between the two of them? They're doing the exact same Maisa. What's the difference between what the suspicious guy is doing and what the guy with the cap is doing? Is it his beged? Is that the difference? One clear difference. Kavana. The kavana of the first guy is he's going to take it and steal it, and the kavana of the second guy is he's going to take it to your car. So what would you say? Is the only difference between the two of them the kavana, or no? If there's a different kavana here, then it's a different maisa. Then the first guy whose kavana is to take it, he's doing a maisa of stealing. The second guy who has a kavana to help you out, he's doing a maisa of assisting you. It's not just a difference in kavana. The entire act is redefined by the intention of the person holding the baggage. Sometimes kavana...
It's the result that changes. The Maisa itself, up to a certain point, is exactly the same.
Right.
It's just the result of what you're intending on doing changes. He runs away with your bag. He puts it in your car. But until pulling it off the conveyor belt and walking 10 feet to the door.
Right. Would you say that's the same Maisa?
The Maisa itself, up to that point, is the same.
Or would you say, no, we could redefine the Maisa as, if we put on our Lomdus glasses, we could say...
If you're calling the Maisa something, what's he doing?
Yeah, right. What is he doing? Exactly. What is he doing?
Is he stealing it, or is he helping you?
Correct.
Also, you, as the owner of the bag, really give the person implicit permission, if he's wearing a red cap, to do it too.
Right.
Depending on your attitude towards him.
True. But I'm just giving a mashal that the kavana of somebody doing something would not just be a difference in kavana, but it could redefine the entire act of what is taking place. Is it an act of stealing, or is it an act of assisting? Yeah? In other words, if we would take a picture of it and they would be wearing the same begadim, it would look the same. But what is being performed here? Is it a geneva, or is it a chesed? Okay. Says Reb Chaim, there are two types of kavanas by tefillah. One type of kavana is, you need to think about the meaning of the words. That's kavana. So you could have two guys davening Shemona Esrei. One guy thinks about the meaning of the words, one guy doesn't. They're both davening, they're both saying the words, but one guy is adding the translation and one guy is not. Fine. That's kavana. But then there's another thing. There's an awareness of what you're doing. What are we doing when we're davening Shemona Esrei? It's an awareness that you're standing lifnei melech machi amlach makadosh baruch hu. Even if you're not thinking about the meaning of the words, you could have two guys. One guy in his mind, he's going like this, but in his mind is, where do I have to go today? Where do I have to meet my clients? Where am I going to invest my holdings? So he with absolutely no cognizance that he's oimei lifnei Hashem. And the other guy, he understands he's standing before melech machi amlach makadosh baruch hu, but he's not thinking about the meaning of the words. It's not, so says Reb Chaim, it's not that one guy is having kavanah and one guy is not. Then, one guy is davening and one guy is not davening. A guy who's standing in shul, he could be shuckling, he could be wearing the most religious looking clothing. But if he doesn't have the basic cognizance that he's oimed lefnei melech machi amlach makadosh baruch hu, his mind is completely preoccupied with what he has to do. That's not tefillah. It's not, he doesn't have kavanah. It's that he's not davening. He's stealing and not helping, right? This is an example where kavanah completely redefines what's taking place. If a guy is standing in front of his siddur saying the words, but his mind is completely not present, lacking even the basic awareness that he's oimei lefnei melech machi amlach makadosh baruch hu, that's not tefillah. It's not even a maisa of tefillah. That's nothing. He's not davening. It's a frightening thing, because Levi Yodei Amaras Nafshin. We all know about ourselves that, yeah, we do get carried away. Our mind does get carried away. And throughout the Shemona Esrei, do we even have one time the cognizance that we're Oimei Lefnei Melech Malchim Lam Kadosh Baruch Hu? Says Reb Chaim, the thought that I'm standing before the Melech is what the Rambam refers to as Kavanas Halev in Perek Dalet, that if you're not aware for every bracha of Shemona Esrei that you're standing before Hashem, not only you're not Yotzei, you didn't daven. However, if you had a basic awareness that you're Oimei Lefnei Hashem, now the kavana of the meaning of the words, you should be mechavein for the whole Shemona Esrei, but only for the first bracha is it ma'akeh. Mishnah Berurah does not discuss this whole shaila. Mishnah Berurah doesn't say anything about it. Mishnah Berurah says if you're not mechavein for the first bracha, you're not yotzei, but you don't go back. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't say if during V'lamal Shinim you weren't aware you were Oimei Lefnei HaMelech, you're also not yotzei. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't say that.
Okay, so and would it be considered? So it would be considered bracha lefa
according to Reb
Chaim?
Well, even let's say without Reb Chaim, let's say you're not mechavein mayavos. What's the rest of the Shemona Esrei?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm going to come back to that. Okay, let's read it inside very briefly, and then we'll see a cool. So then I have a question for you. I'm davening Shemona Esrei, right? Let's say Mendy's davening Shemona Esrei. So Mendy's a big tzaddik. Mendy has all the kavanas Reb Chaim, kavanas Mishnah Berurah. He's aware the whole Shemona Esrei is Oimei Lefnei HaMelech. But the rest of the guys, I'm not saying in this shul, he's davening in a different shul in Chves, in Idaho. And the rest of the 9 guys, they're a bunch of clowns. I learned that expression here in the 5 towns. And none of them are cognizant that they're Oimei Lefnei HaMelech. So that means, how many people in the shul are davening? 1. So that means Mendy's not davening with the minyan. Because if you have one guy davening and the rest of the guys twiddling their thumbs, it's not a minyan. What?
I think the minyan saves that. Saves the clown.
No, but you need. It's not a minyan.
We learned many times in this very base medrash.
Yeah.
Seaboard.
Yeah. That's true, but it's not a tzibur. Let's say you have 10 Jews in a room, and one of them davens, and 9 of them are just sitting there. That's not tefillah b'tzibur. What? You're right, but I want to know, what if, right? It's very likely. I think if we would take a poll, don't do it, but it used to be, they used to take these polls over here on the chat, how many people, so if you take a poll, how many people are cognizant during the entire Shemona Esrei that they're Oimei Lefnei HaMelech? I would like to think it would be a high number, but as much as I love you guys, I'm not sure in reality what % of people are cognizant during Shemona Esrei that they're Oimei Lefnei HaMelech for the whole Shemona Esrei. Well, if that's the case, according to Reb Chaim, they're not davening. If they're not davening, so then the one guy who's davening is not davening with the minyan. So that was the kasha that Rav Moshe Aaron Stern asked on this Reb Chaim. And he asked the Brisker Rav. And the Brisker Rav said like this. He asked, am I mechuyev to go out and go find a minyan where you have 9 other people that you could be confident are aware for the whole Shemona Esrei they're Oimei Lefnei HaMelech?
Be careful, because you're going to have to worry about going to shuls.
Yeah, that's the question. Can you find a shul even?
So the Rav's very comfortable there, so it's good.
Again, this is the Lima Ba'alma. So the Brisker Rav said like this. Rav Chaim Volozhiner says that if somebody davens without kavana, it's not like a carbon tamid, because carbon tamid has a nefesh. The animal has a nefesh. So if someone davens without kavana, it's not like carbon tamid that the animal has a nefesh, but it's like a carbon mincha. Carbon mincha it has no nefesh, it has no soul. That means, what's the Brisker Rav saying? That if you daven without kavana, it's not the pshat that it's nothing at all. It's like a carbon mincha. What's a carbon mincha? A carbon mincha is a dry carbon that has no soul, but a carbon it is. Meaning,
the tefillah still remains.
So that means it's a tefillah. It's what Reb Chaim calls a cheftza shel tefillah. Now only one of the people here are yotzei the mitzvah of tefillah. In other words, at the end of the day, you have 10 guys in shul. 9 of them are thinking about what lays ahead of them during the day. One of them is cognizant for the whole Shemana Esrei that they're standing in a melech. One of them gets the mitzvah of tefillah. But the other guys, they were davening. They're just not yotzei. They're not yotzei the mitzvah. But they did the chefza of tefillah so that one guy who is yotzei is considered davening with a minyan.
So now the Maisa takes on its own. The Maisa now is no longer about.
So the Maisa is.
The Maisa, you're going through the motions, but there is a Maisa that's taking place.
Right.
So you go back to the example of the guy.
In other words, it's.
There's 3 ways. There's a guy that's stealing. There's a guy that's helping, and there's a guy that's picking up a suitcase and moving.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So here in Tefillah, you're just saying the words and you're going through emotion. You don't have kavanah, but you don't.
What does it mean?
There's really 3 ways.
Yeah, that might be a good way to put it.
According to this pshat, it's
Yeah.
very important for an individual to try to find a min where there's a big tzaddik who is for sure
Why?
with kavanah.
Why?
Because it turns his regular going through the motions into a mitzdaref to a tefillah.
No, you mean what if you have 10 guys who are just.
No.
Let's say you have 10 guys who are just completely spaced out.
Right.
So they're b'minyan, they're basically the third cat. They're doing a chefza of tefillah b'minyan. But nobody's, I'd say the mitzvah.
But if you have that one guy, though, at least you're contributing to some davening.
I mean, you're a contributor to facilitating one person to be, I'd say the mitzvah of tefillah b'tzibur. Yeah. I mean, that's a very,
The real shaila is whether going through the motion is considered tefillah or not. Meaning not.
The answer is it is considered tefillah, but you're not yotzei the mitzvah.
Yeah, but you're getting a carb. What does that mean? So you get
What do you get? You get a little entrance prize, but you don't get the mitzvah of tefillah. According to Rabbi Chaim, hey, gentlemen, according to Rabbi Chaim, this puts a tremendous responsibility. Because Rabbi Chaim is saying there are 2 kavanas. One is Parsha. Well, 2 things. We'll come back to the first thing is, by the way, everybody knows, if you're not mechavein to Perish Hamilos in Avos, you're not Yotzei Shemana Esrei either. Right? That's a very important halacha to remember. During the first Bracha Shemana Esrei, you need to think about the meaning of the words. If you don't, you're not Yotzei the mitzvah. Reb Chaim is adding, now according to the Chazon Ish for a change has a big kula. According to the Chazon Ish, let's say during V'la Moshinim, I think I'm in
Airport.
I think I'm in the stadium. I'm at the game, I'm in Shemana Esrei. According to Chazon Ish, you're Yotzei. Right? According to Reb Chaim, you're not Yotzei. It's a big nafkamina lahalacha. Here, let's read this. What?
According to the Rambam, certainly not.
No, according to the way the Chazon Ish reads the Rambam.
So this is only interpretation of
Yeah, meaning the Rambam in the first halacha says kavan is ma'akev. According to Chazon Ish says hold your horses. In Parak Yud he'll explain it's only for the first bracha. So according to Chazon Ish, there's a tremendous kula that you could be completely spaced out the rest of Shemana Esrei. It's not a good thing, but you're yotzei the mitzvah. According to Reb Chaim, you're not yotzei the mitzvah. Let me read to you one brief section here, and then we'll end off with one question. He says, "V'nir aloymer detrei gavnei kavanos yesh b'tefillah." There are 2 types of kavana. Ha'achas kavana shel pirush hadvarim. One is the kavana, or the meaning of the words. V'yisoidahu din kavana, and the foundation of it is it's a halacha of kavana. V'sheinis, the second one, she'echaven shu omed b'tefillah fnei Hashem. You have a cognizance you're standing before Hashem. K'mavur b'dvar parak daled sham umahi hakavana. Sheyifne es liboy mikol hamachshavos. You clear your mind from all thoughts. V'yira atzma kilu omed lefnei hashchina. V'nira the kavana zu eino midin kavana rakshu me etzem ma'isa hatfila. The second kavana, they have to be aware that you're standing for Hashem. It's not a kavana. It redefines the act. V'im ein liboy panoi. If you haven't cleansed your mind, ve'eino yirayas atzma she'omed lefnei Hashem. If you don't have that feeling that I'm standing for Hashem, Ein zeh ma'isa tefillah. It's not an act of davening. V'harehu b'chlal misasik. So you say, then what am I doing? So I would say it's exercise. You're moving like this, and the heart rate is slightly faster than if you wouldn't be doing this. I have a question. I remember in the Aguda where I grew up, so they would bring in like 10 mentally challenged men who unfortunately didn't have the same abilities as people fully developed, and they would also come into shul, and they'd also go like this, and they would also clap, and they'd also bow by moedim. And I would think sometimes, Nebuch, our Shemona Esrei is not on a higher madrega than theirs. We're doing the exact same thing they're doing. It's not a Maisa Tefilla, what we're doing. That's how Rabbi Chaim looks at it. We explained it might be Cheftza Shel Tefillah, whatever that means. Do you get credit for that? But according to Rabbi Chaim, it's not a Maisa of Tefillah. So Perush Hamilos is Kavana, and the Kavana that you're standing for Hashem is what makes it a Maisa of Tefillah. Otherwise, you're just a Masasek, and it has no din of a Maisa, and that is Ma'akir for the whole Shemana Esrei.
According to Rabbi Chaim, right?
In other words, you're sleep talking. Let's have a guy, let's say in the middle of his sleep, he starts rambling the Shemana Esrei. He yotzei or not yotzei? He said every word. He said Mashma Hamagashim. He said Yalaviyo. He said the whole thing. But he was sleep talking. Of course you're not yotzei. That's not a Maisa of Tefillah. It's Masasek. The same way if on Shabbos you brush against the light switch and you turn it on, you're not a shoygeg. You don't need kapara, pashtos. Kiveger has a chiddush maybe, yeah. But let's let you know, you're walking down the hallway and you had no way to know and you just brushed against the light switch. That's not a shoygeg, it's Masasek. That's not called turning off the light by accident. You didn't turn off the light. You were walking down the hall. So if you're not aware you're standing for Hashem, that's not called davening without awareness. That's not davening. That's what Rabbi Chaim says.
So according to Rabbi Chaim, he would not. Most of the people have certain. He would never let anyone say Shemona Esrei then, based off this, because if Roy's not doing it, then they wouldn't allow it to happen. It must be that.
I don't know about that. I would say, even though most are not doing it, you're still allowed to daven.
According to that pshat, but if we say, in other words, that pshat, you have to come out.
Yeah, but again, you don't get credit. You're not yotzei. No, you're not yotzei tefillah.
What are you doing?
I don't know.
If you don't daven, are you over anything?
Good question.
Are you over anything? Because you might not.
Yes.
You are.
You have to daven at least midaraisa once a day.
There is a middle ground. That meaning.
Did I daven? Yes. Am I not varian?
So by davening, saying the words, but not having kavanah, you might not be yet to the mitzvah, but you're not over not davening.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Something anyway.
No. I would say, no.
You're not only are you not davening,
I would say no. I would say you didn't daven. So now the question of bracha lata. So let's discuss the following question. Let me discuss the following question. The Torah says, this is like connected but not connected. The Shulchan Aruch says one thing for sure. HaMispal tzarich sheyechavin b'chol habrachos. Right? L'chachil you have to have kavanah all the brachos. V'meinu yachol l'chavin b'kulam. L'fachos, this is the Shulchan Aruch. Yechavin ba'avos. At the very least, avos. Yeah? V'mli loy kivin ba'avos. So let's say you didn't have kavanah ba'avos. Afal pishakim b'chol shar yachsor v'yispalel. Got it? That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. You have to have kavanah minimum avos. If you didn't, you have to daven again. Got it? Says Rama, nowadays we don't go back. Why? Probably when you go back, you won't have kavana either. So the question is, this guy who davened without kavana by avos, his next 18 brachos, what were they? Were they bracha lebatala? Pashas would say, yeah. So why doesn't he go back? The answer is, if he forgot Yalav Yavai, we're confident that the second time he has a shot of remembering Yalav Yavai, even though then also you could forget. But at least, right, for Yalav Yavai, you have a fighting shot that you could remember. But if we're telling you to go back because you didn't have Kavanah, chances are you're not going to have Kavanah the second time. Frekt, the Steipler, and the Bir Halach asked the same question. But what about a guy who's in the middle of Shemona Esrei and he realized, I didn't have Kavanah by Avos? We should tell this guy, stop dead in your tracks, and just call it a day. Why say another 10 brachas levatala? I mean, that's similar to what you're asking. In other words, if a guy is not mechavein by avos perish hamilos, then he's not yotzei. And according to the letter of the law, he has to go back. It's just nowadays you don't go back because he's not going to get it right the second time. So a guy in middle of Shemona Esrei, he realized he blew the avos. Just, call it a day. Cut your losses, right? Cut your losses. Or don't even start maybe. Let's say a guy knows there's no way I'm going to have kavanah by avos. Should he daven? So, here, I'll read to you the Bir Halacha. Says the Bir Halacha, l'chayra, all the Rama means is if you finished, you don't go back. But if you're in the middle of Shemana Esrei and you had in mind, you realize you didn't have kavana, since mitzad adin lo yatsa, you have to stop davening. Just call it a day. He says, yeah, either go back and make sure you have kavanah or stop davening. But if you remember, but he says from the Chai Adam, it's mashma, you just continue going. So says the Mishnah Berurah, in my opinion, if you remembered after you finished avos that you didn't have kavanah, stop dead in your tracks. Don't go further. Wait for Chazar Hashatz. Be yoytzei avos with the Chazar Hashatz having kavanah then, and then continue on. But, does anybody do that? Are we always sure that we were mechavein by avos, repair shamilos? And if not, if you remember Rosh Hashanah, you stop dead in your tracks, the Chafetz Chaim says you can't go on. Yeah, I think right now I'm...
I don't think anybody's been taught that growing up, though.
What, Simon Kuf Aleph?
Well, no.
I think everyone here knows that you have to have kavanah by avos.
Yeah.
But does everybody know? And if you don't, I think everybody knows. If you don't, you're not yotzei, right? Does everybody know that? We've all heard that, right? I think everybody knows that if you weren't mechaven for first bracha, you weren't yotzei. But does everybody know? Okay, so now what do I do? It's really unclear. So the Steipler has, to answer this question, he creates an in-between ground, which might help us with Rabbi Chaim. He says, says a Steipler, avada and avada. If you were not mechaven by avos, you weren't yotzei. However, that doesn't mean that the brachos you said after were bracha levatala. What does that mean? Avada, it's a tefillah. And avada, you'll get schar for it. You're mekayim a mitzvah. You just don't get credit for the mitzvah of tefillah.
Different mitzvah?
No, you don't get the mitzvah.
You're not yotzei shachris. You're not yotzei shachris. So, and it could be you're over and not davening shachris. What did I do though? I davened to Hashem, and I'll be rewarded. And were my brachas afterwards a bracha levatala? They were not a bracha levatala, meaning I offered a tefillah to Hashem. It's not the way it should have been. I'm not yotzei mitzvah shachris. Lo yatsa, meaning when I go up to Shamayim, I'll be rewarded for davening, and I'll be punished for not being yotzei in the mitzvah of shachris. In other words, I was not yotzei tefillah, but I didn't say brachas levatala. Therefore, let's say a guy knows, I'm so distracted, I'm so angry this morning. Why? Because I told the mailman to put the newspaper on the second step, and he put it on the first step, and the next time he's going to wring his neck. And I can't daven. Let's say a person knows that they will not have any kavanah by davening. Should they daven or should they not daven?
No.
According to what the Steipler just said.
Yes, you should. You have to. You should.
Oh, meaning they're going to have kavanah for the other...
Nothing. They're not going to have no kavanah.
Yeah, you should.
They should daven.
That's private.
They did a mitzvah of tefillah, but they didn't have kavanah, and therefore they're not yotzei. But they should still daven.
But they can do it any time of the day they want.
He seems to contradict everything else.
He can open up at the Tehillim and say the same stuff too. He doesn't have to do it actually in the format and order of
That's the only reason why we go to shul.
He says, that what?
So you can do it any time during the day he wants to. It's tefillah.
He did a mitzvah. He just didn't do the mitzvah ketikuna, and he wasn't yotzei.
Basically.
Then the Steipler says, yeah, right. He davened. He's just not yotzei. Then the Steipler says he found a sort of a nugget from the Rekeach. We'll end with this. A nugget. He found a gem. Yeah, meaning like this. The Gemara says, our Gemara says that you have to be mechavein for Shemana Esrei, and if not, you have to go back. But if you're mechavein for avos, you don't have to go back. The Rekeach had a different gersa in the Gemara. The Rekeach's gersa was, "V'im eino yachal lechavein esli by bekulan yechavein esli by ba'achas mehen ba'avos oy b'hayda." Either avos or hayda. That means according to Rekeach, if you were not mechavein for avos and you were mechavein for maidim, you're yotzei. Now we don't paskin that way. Shulchan Aruch paskin is avos or bust. But at least according to the Rekeach, there is a reason to continue on in the Shemana Esrei, even though you blew the avos. Why? Just make sure you'll have kavanah by Haidah, and at least according to this sheet in the Rishonim, you'll be yotzei tefillah b'kavanah. Meaning, the way the Steipler looks at it, and I think we might need to use this for Reb Chaim as well, is that there are two things. There's a mitzvah of tefillah, and it happens to be you have to add kavanah to the tefillah. And if you don't add kavanah to the tefillah, you're not yotzei, and you don't get credit. You're not yotzei mitzvah shachris, but you still davened. You just didn't positively add the kavanah. So it comes out then. Let's say a person is a Mil Shemana Esrei, and he was not mechaven for avos. Should you stop dead in your tracks, or do you just continue? So Steipler is giving a reason why basically we just continue. You're davening brachas levatala. It's not levatala. It's not for naught. It still has value, even though you don't get the mitzvah.
I think just on the chance that you might end up doing one that's not the vatala, you should continue anyways.
What do you mean one that's not good?
Maybe the first 3 brachas you don't have kavanah, but 3 brachas later you do have kavanah.
No, but if you miss the first one,
it ruins the whole thing.
Yeah,
Each
you're out.
bracha in itself is not considered its own.
No, right. It's the first one, right?
Okay. No, the first one I'm saying, the first one you did.
Oh, the first one you did?
The first one you did. Then we're making anyways. Okay.
So I think the bottom line is what we should try to take out of it is you should really think about the meaning of the words for the first bracha. Now, I don't know if we're mamish machmer like Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim has a chumrah. You have to have a positive cognizance, your oimil fnei hamelech, for the whole Shemana Esrei. The Chazon doesn't hold like that. But at the very least, what everybody holds of is you need to be mechavein by avos, and we need to be mechazek that kavanah. Shkoyach. Thank you everyone for coming.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.